Okay, good morning, everybody. This is a regularly scheduled and noticed meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. It is Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, and it's approximately 10:03 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let me just go over the rules for participation via Zoom remote meeting. Everything is being recorded, so be aware that if your video is up, people will be able to see the backgrounds of your screen and everything else. And this meeting will later be posted on the town's website for further reference. And of course, we'll have official minutes of this meeting. I'm Peter Halley, the chair of this organization. What we'll do is we will have public comment during this meeting, and I will recognize people who want to make public comments. We will hear comments from the members of our committee first, and we'll be following the agenda as soon as that is approved. So it's basically just be aware that the meeting is being recorded. So we have a quorum. I'm seeing Peter Halley, Kathy Baird, Donald Green, Steve Perlman, Peter Kahn, Jean Briskman, Scott Ulm, Gary Beller, Lou Bassano, Lynn Filipski, and Donna Martino, Bill Gardner, and see Patty Deuster. Have I left anybody who's a member of the committee out? I don't believe so far. And so that is our that is a quorum plus several other people, and so we can proceed.
There's somebody here, just so you know, it's just identified as iPhone 471244. If you could change that to be whoever your name is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, it may be me. I don't know how to do that, but I will figure that out.
Okay.
Donna, no, we see you. And
Yeah,
Ralph,
I'm fine.
So is that Donna?
No, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I see Donna. But
I see
oh,
how to do it.
Ralph. Okay,
It's
so
Ralph.
now no, Ralph Kunkel has just joined us, and that's Amy
DeCibio.
Okay.
Yeah, great. So we have a quorum, and let's just go through the list of things that have to be done. The approval. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
Well, so move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
Okay.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so the agenda is approved. A motion for approval of the proposed minutes for the last meeting. Is there somebody who will move?
I'll make that motion as well.
Gary Beller. A second?
Second.
Second. Great. Thank you, Lou. Any discussion? Any changes need to be made? Okay. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Anybody opposed? No. Okay, great. So let's see. I think the first item is the update on the Town Council Study Committee, and that'll be Donna Martino. And I noticed that we have another member of the committee present here today, Curtis Barnes. So Donna, could you tell us what has transpired since the last time, and how are things going?
Things are going very well. We have a dedicated group, 9 members, and then some of us who are non-voting and alternates. We meet every 2 weeks for an hour and a half. And last week we had Michael Dutton, who's town manager of Bridgewater, and he was involved in the transfer from another form of government to town manager, which is of great interest to us. And actually, I was referring to Curtis's notes, which are excellent. Curtis went over really what transpired during the entire evening, the afternoon. He did say that occasionally you can also do an ATM once or twice a year, just for folks who like it. He talked about how important it was to keep the public informed as to the progress and the issues, as well as the other forms of government that, we have considered and are considering. Joe Grouse is our chair. He has been excellent, and he's also meeting, I wouldn't say privately, but independently with Libby Gibson, as well as John Giorgio. So I think a lot of people are on board and consider this a serious subject, and we're doing our best to review all aspects of change of government or some sort of modification. This week, on Wednesday, we meet Wednesdays from 3 to 4:30. We are having someone from the Collins Institute, which is University of Massachusetts, about public policy, about efficiency of government. And Libby Gibson is also going to address us. We've already received our packet for this Wednesday's meeting. I guess what I'd like to do is answer any questions you folks, our members, might have regarding the committee, and also Curtis is here as well. So, what do you think, Peter?
So Gary, you have a question?
Donna,
Yes.
when you had that individual speak to your meeting
Michael
last week,
Dutton.
yeah,
Yes.
what form of government did his group change from? What was it before, and which form of government was the change made to?
It was the annual town meeting,
Right.
and it's now what we're looking at, which is council members and town manager.
So that's what they actually are using today?
Yes, I believe it's 9 council members and the town manager. And he went into the financials of it and so forth. Curtis, I defer, if this is appropriate and okay with everybody, if you wish, is that possible? Peter, Holly?
I recognize Curtis.
Curtis, would you like to speak, since you're the expert on this, actually?
Soon as I can get unmuted, yep. Well, I'm not an expert, I'm just persistent.
A little bit of both.
I think the committee is doing exactly what we'd hoped to do. We're looking at all of the options, but I just want to make sure one of the things we're going to do hopefully this summer is visit every civic association on the island. There are 32 associations. And one of the questions is, why are you coming to us? Why are you going to the Sconset Civic Association? Here's my answer. An annual town meeting does not let you go and speak. In fact, if you're not a registered voter, you can't get in the door, except for Kathy. A town council, anyone can speak. And the important thing is, those of you who are there during the summer, there will be town council meetings, if you follow the normal pattern, at least one in July and one in August. So the concerns that your group may have that you can't express individually now, you will be able to go to the town council, get up and speak and be heard. And I think that's one of the strengths of the change that I'm hoping that we implement, that will give your voice a much stronger voice than you have now.
I would like.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Don, did you have a?
I just wanted to add to, or just elaborate for a second on what Curtis said. Michael Dutton did mention that as one of the major benefits is that citizens have a better access to government, to paraphrase what Curtis is saying. And that's a big That's very important because we don't have that. The efficiency as well as the opportunity to speak on a regular basis to town council. Those are the two big benefits, I think.
Patty and then Gary. Yeah.
Good morning. Did you ask at all what the timeline was between the transition and the different forms of government? How long it took to go from one to the other?
Curtis, it was a long road. Curtis, are you more specific about that?
Well, the first thing is the article that our committee presents will have to go to town meeting. And unfortunately, they took 5 months before they got the committee started. I had hoped that we could get it on the ballot for this year. But given Nantucket's pattern, there may be a special town meeting. If the article to establish a town council or whatever other form is approved, then it goes to the legislature. And unfortunately, I was on the town government study committee. We made a variety of recommendations 2 years ago that were voted and approved by town meeting, and they went to the legislature and they haven't acted on anything. So, but the process is town meeting votes, it goes to the legislature. If the legislature approves, then they normally would refer it back for an affirmative vote at the next ballot. So the probability is that you'll be a couple of years at best away from implementing a change if it's approved. One of my hopes is that Tom Dixon, who is on our committee, is a select board member and used to work for Fernandez, has contacts in Boston that may help facilitate the process once it starts, I hope.
Great.
So 2 years is about what you're looking at.
Great. Gary and then Peter.
Really, I was just asking what the timeline is that they're expecting. And what I guess what Curtis is saying is that if there's a slight chance that there might be a second town meeting this year, it might be something that you might be able to present, but if not, it'll have to wait at least till the 2025 spring town meeting. And then, as Curtis says, it's going to have to get cleared by all of the state people that review all of these things. So it's a long road, it looks like. Are there other forms of government besides the town council you folks are looking at as well, like the representative form of government?
We have looked at all,
Yes.
all four types. There's the annual town meeting, the representative town meeting, town council, and a mayor council, such as Northampton has, where our chief of police came from. But the representative town meeting still wouldn't let you go and talk, and the average number of reps is about 200 in most places, but it's just a smaller version of an annual town meeting, and frankly, I don't think it'll accomplish anything more than what we have. So I'm obviously pushing for the town council.
Yeah, and I think most of the members are. We've been discussing other forms, but it doesn't seem to suit our needs.
Peter Kahn.
If I understood correctly, the fellow from Bridgewater that was saying that they have a town council form of government, and then they have some hybrid ATM as well.
You can petition for a town, an ATM on an issue.
I'm sorry, say that again, Curtis. I didn't
And
understand.
citizens can petition for an annual town meeting, a special town meeting on a particular issue. That's happened in Barnstable on a couple of occasions.
Does that work? I mean,
That's not the main, that's not the
No.
main form of government. It's just
Not
an ancillary
I
option.
know, but I'm trying to understand even why even go that route. It sort of
They-
seems to be done to
Well,
defeat the whole purpose.
let me maybe answer that question, although something I know nothing about. If you think of a lot of states like California that have a route to bypass the legislature on items of importance to the population, I have a feeling that this is sort of like it's a check and balance on the legislature, that if the legislature, meaning the town council, does something that is really, not very welcome by the citizenry, they have a way to call a town meeting and either rectify that or to bring something to the town at the town meeting that the town council has refused to consider. It seems to me it's almost a check and balance type of a situation. Hadn't thought about it in this context, but I think there's a lot of, to our states, some states have it, some states don't, have this kind of what I'd call a citizen balance, to be able to, through a citizen petition, which usually requires a lot of names on it,
Well,
to
that's the
get it
question.
that far. But to get things done that a out of step legislature refuses to do.
Well, it would have to be, I mean, the whole point of arguing against the ATM is that only less than 10% show up, right? So I would have to imagine that if you're going to have this combination, you're going to have a very high standard to call the ATM.
Peter, the ATM is just a side. It's not the main, it's not the main.
I understand. I understand.
It's just an opportunity, basically.
Don Green, you had a question, I think.
Yeah, I was wondering, when people show up for this town council to speak, have they been pre-selected or have to tell what subject they have come to talk about? Because, I don't know how many people can show up at once. There's only so much time in a day to address it. So I don't know if there's any controls to make it significant, but time worthy.
They do have, Curtis, I will let you speak, but I do recall, I watched the Barnstable one, the Barnstable town meeting, and they do limit you to 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. But Curtis, would you like to address it further?
Well, thank you. I went to Barnstable and I walked in, I said, I'm from Nantucket. I'm not a voter or anything, but I was allowed to speak. Anyone can go to speak at a town council meeting, and in Bridgewater, if you recall, Donna, they have a public session at the beginning and at the end. So after they've done their business, if you want to comment on what they did, you can come back. Normally, it's a 3-minute request, and but you don't have to put your name on an agenda before you go. You just walk up, and in Barnstable, you sign a piece of paper with your name and tell them who you are, and that goes into the record. But there's no pre-screening. It's a pretty open system.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody else with questions?
Gene does.
Scott
I
has a
do.
question.
How are the counselors in Bridgewater selected? Are they all at large? Are they based on geographical cutting around of the town, or how is that done?
They have 9 precincts in Bridgewater, and as I recall, there's a grouping of 3 and 3. I know that, interestingly enough, the 3 of the counselors in Bridgewater are the finance committee. How about that? And what Mr. Dutton said is their whole process in getting their budget ready takes about five months. The members of the council who are the finance committee meet with the department heads, go through their budgets, and come back with a recommendation. And I don't know if anyone's read my letter in this week's Inquiring Mirror, where we're going to have 107 articles, and we're going to publish it 4 times. So it's time.
Yeah. Okay,
Scott had a question.
Scott, yeah.
What's the best case against town council? I find all this very compelling, but what are the arguments against it?
The argument
Ideally on a
is
less
that it's
political.
a tradition in New England. We've been doing it since before the Revolutionary War, the town meeting. Before we declared our independence, we had town meetings. And it's New England. 62% of all the communities in the United States, over 2,500 population, have a council form of government. It's much more efficient.
Is that all the devil's advocates got is tradition?
Yes, I think so.
Well, it
We
was.
can't find anything else at this point.
And it's Nantucket, don't forget that.
Yeah. So here, I'm concerned about the progress. First of all, has anybody here gone to a Nantucket select board meeting?
Me, every night.
Has anybody other than Curtis spoken at the select board meeting? So if you have that experience, I think, and share this experience, anybody can go to a select board meeting. The select board presumably would become the town council, and anybody can speak. And yes, the select board limits the time during which you can speak, because some people are extremely lengthy and won't take no for an answer. But everybody has a voice. And indeed, during the off season, and because all of these meetings are virtual, even if you're a non-resident taxpayer, you can speak to these at these meetings. So basically, a change from our current situation to a town council situation will change very little, except the annual town meeting. I see there's disagreement. Let me finish, and then maybe there won't be a disagreement by the time I finish. As I spent a fair amount of time yesterday skimming through is it 106 articles, whatever the number is, that have been published for the annual town meeting. And I scratched my head again, and is this any way to govern? And can all these articles wait for one time a year? And normally, all these things would just come before the legislature, which would become the something that looks like the select board, hopefully with more members on it, and they'd be decided. I think this idea that was brought up of a annual town meeting by petition may be also a nod in the direction of just the habit of 100 and some odd years since the founding of Nantucket, that really the annual town meeting isn't going away. It will only come back when it's absolutely necessary, if indeed that were part of what was recommended in terms of the change of government. One of the big issues, I think, and it was brought up by a select board member a couple of weeks ago, was what about zoning amendments? Because typically zoning amendments require 2/3 vote of the annual town meeting, whereas normal bylaw amendments only require a simple majority. And I guess all the language would have to be changed, and presumably the new town council would also have 2/3 vote on zoning amendments. I don't know if anybody's considered and thought about that or not. But the way I look at this, you're just you're changing the legislature from the annual town meeting and whoever chooses to attend to a elected group of representatives who sit as the select board and as the legislature and make decisions according to a set of rules. I don't, that's a big change, but indeed it will look very familiar to everybody, I think, over time. My concern now is the following. As I'm hearing, first of all, is the 5-month delay that Curtis mentioned before in even getting this thing started. And then secondly, as I read the bylaw that was, I guess, bylaw, whatever it was, the proposal that was passed, which was Curtis, that was your warrant article. This was not to study forms of government. It was to study the town council form of government. And I'm just concerned about a lot of spinning of wheels of something that was done, years ago by the town government study committee, and has sort of coalesced into a town council approach, and wonder when this group is actually going to start drafting an article that lays out the form of government. Seems to me that there is at least an article that was presented to the last town meeting that could be the basic format for an article with changes to it. So it seems to me there's a lot of studying, but a lot of not actually putting down on paper what this town council form of government would do and adapting it to the needs and traditions of Nantucket. That's my speech.
I know. May I?
Yeah.
Okay, before Curtis, but one of the reasons we studied, as a committee, we studied other forms of government is we are well aware that some of the citizens may have questions, and I think it only makes sense to thoroughly review other forms of government. You did give a wonderful speech. So I'm trying to remember. The other thing is John Giorgio is already on board, and I think that's very important. And he will hopefully guide us in terms of moving this along. We are very well aware that we are very responsible to all the citizens of Nantucket. So we really want to do a thorough search of options, if you will. And also we want to keep people informed as to what we're doing. And Curtis's letter, if you hopefully you've read it, if not, it's on the op-ed page of the Inky this week. And I would see this as an example of reaching out in the very beginning. I mean, we've only been in existence for a month, maybe, I don't know. But we have to keep the public informed as to our progress. As far as getting things done quickly, from what I understand about the government and so forth, it's not possible. And we really could not come to 2024 ATM. We've discussed the idea of 2025 just to get things started. We're also, as I mentioned, we're going to be presented information by John Giorgio and Libby. And I think that'll give us more information as to how we're coming along. But overall, we seem to be doing well. And Joe Gross is doing an excellent job. So Curtis, I defer to you.
Well, I'll just add to that. Thank you, Donna. The FinCom, after they took my original article, amended it to say that we should look at all the options as well as town council. And that's very important. And quite frankly, I think the committee has a schedule to meet every 2 weeks, every Wednesday, every 2 weeks. And I think we're doing a great job of moving forward. We're gathering information. And I would remind you all, you can join by Zoom to watch those meetings Wednesday afternoons at 3 o'clock, and the agenda is posted. And I'd invite you to join us and hear what's going on, especially this week with Libby and John speaking. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on retreat in Bermuda trying to find little white balls all week, but I'll catch up when I get back.
Yeah. So good. So when can anybody, the timeline I'm interested in is, can any of you who are participating in this committee speculate as to when the committee might have a motion to focus on the town council form of government and write a bylaw?
No, I can't. I think we have to defer to John Giorgio and Libby.
They're not on the committee.
What? Sorry?
They're not on the committee.
that's another point. Curtis, since you're here and you're with us, I am hopeful, I am hopeful that we will somehow be able to have an official influence when we do get to town council form of government. Non-voting taxpayers, that is.
Okay, well, I have language already drafted that I will submit at the appropriate time that might be helpful in that regard. But somebody needs to let me know when that time has come.
Submit it and let us have a look at it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Don't throw us a curveball when we're down the road. I mean, be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, I just want to
I
see.
think that's great,
ballpark
Peter.
is. I want to see where the ballpark is, Curtis. And so far, it seems like we haven't even built the stadium yet.
It's coming.
Okay.
Be patient. We're working on it. We're very encouraged by our progress.
Sorry to be so pressing, but
And,
We got Epstein back in Boston yesterday, so maybe there's hope yet.
hey, good. And Belichick's going to coach the high school football team.
We're
Yes.
working on a contract.
Good. Okay,
Peter,
I
Peter,
apologize for my stridency, but I guess I am telegraphing that I was hopeful that the committee would actually be further along than it is, and I understand that it's just been formed, it's just getting started, and a lot of people need to be brought up to speed. So I'm very, very supportive of what you guys are doing, and looking forward to a product.
Peter, I have a quick question.
Yep.
Just to sort of carry on with this issue of, I must confess, I'm a bit cynical. Obviously, it's taken a long time. It's going to continue to take a long time. On top of all that, you've got the legislature to worry about. I'm curious, this sort of follows up on what Scott was sort of saying. What's the argument? I mean, to what extent should we be concerned in any way with the current town selectmen and or the town administration with regard to their position on this? And is there any vested interest that they have that might oppose this?
Yeah, go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, to answer your question, Peter, the fact that John Giorgio is already involved and already meeting with Joe Rouse, and Libby is involved, very much so. She was involved in organizing our first webinar with the Massachusetts Municipal Association, which Michael Dutton is a consultant for. So they are very involved in this.
Yeah. So might I suggest, Peter Kahn, that I guess the first thought I have about your question is that you need to bring our local representatives in the legislature into this process, and it's not going to go anyplace unless they're fully committed to it. And
Right.
I expect that either has been done or is being done. But of course, what is it? And that's my question. What is it? What does it look like?
You will find out.
Yeah, I hope so.
During our lifetime.
Yeah. Gene, yes.
Yeah, I mean, following up on what Peter just said, a bigger concern is why should since this has to be approved by the town meeting, why should the powers that be within the town meeting agree to losing their power? If in fact the construction and real estate portions of the community more or less control the town meeting, why should they be willing to give that up in favor of any other alternative? It seems like that's a bigger battle than is dealing with the Libby or the select board.
Or saying another way, why should the 10% of the people or the 8% of the people that actually vote be willing to give up their control of the ATM that they've had all these years.
That's yeah.
Curtis, I'd like to
You
hear
said
Curtis.
it,
view
you
on
said
this.
it more loyally.
Kathy has had her hand up for about 10 minutes. Could you pick her up first?
It's sure. Kathy, how do I tell that your hand is up?
Yes, sir.
I'm actually here now. I got my camera fixed. Just
Oh,
really
great.
quickly, I wouldn't want to address the power struggle thing, but what I just wanted to say was that I have listened to all of the meetings so far that they've had, and I do think that the process that they're going through to learn about what's out there and set that baseline is important to do. So yes, it is taking a little extra time, but I think that it's necessary, and it's very, very informative to learn what all the pros and cons are of the different options. And I think that on the power side, maybe it's a matter of, whoever wants the power is going to figure out a way to get it, no matter what form of government you have. So that's all I have to say there.
Yeah, I think Amy, wait 1 second. I think the point that Jean brings up is a very good one. You have a set of different audiences that you have to convince in order to get this through. And it seems to me that the Gene's audience that he was mentioning is really the town itself has to pass this in the first instance. Well, it's 3 audiences. Your committee has to come up with something, and then it has to come up with something that is acceptable to the town, and it might actually be amended once it gets to a town meeting, and if it's going to get passed. And then after the town meeting, as I understand the process that Curtis described earlier, it's the legislature, and then if the legislature approves, it's back to town. So you have a whole set of different audiences, but it's you have to walk before you can run, and it's the town in the first instance. And hopefully this committee is sort of representative enough so it comes up with something that is likely to be acceptable to the town, but we shall see. Amy, you had your hand up.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't know what everyone here is hearing from people who are residents, but from my sampling of people, I think many are very dissatisfied with the current form of government there. And I don't know if they have spent anywhere near the time that you have looking into the town council format. But I do sense that people don't feel that they're equipped to handle what they're doing. 5 part-time select board members trying to handle all the issues of the town puts a really big strain on the people who actually are employed by the town. So, and they may or may not be staffed properly, or they may or may not be qualified for a lot of the things they're tasked with doing. So from what I hear, pretty overwhelmingly, is that they're definitely excited to explore something else.
Good. Patty.
You're on mute, Patty.
Patty, you're on mute. Yeah, there you go. You're on mute again.
Okay. Now?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. You've been in kind of a due diligence format where and I guess I'm surprised to hear that you really have focused in on one form of government, and your due diligence is to find out all the devils in the detail, all the details from people who have experienced this transition. So you're not looking at alternatives, you're pretty much focused on one thing. But going back to the devils in the details, if you started going into the minutia of how you warrant this, all the questions and the actual concerns come up. So if in your time between now and town meeting, you could put together even a loosely formatted warrant, it gives people something to talk about. And with the talk comes maybe more change. But I think you want to be a presence in the next town meeting and get people talking about and seeing why it's worthwhile, and having some details to it would be helpful, especially since you seem to have quite a few of them already.
Okay. Okay,
Sorry, I was distracted, Patty, but we're not ready yet, and we certainly want to be prepared. Maybe actually what I remember is everything had to be submitted already. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's
For
right.
town meeting?
The town meeting warrant has been published.
Yes, so we can't do it this year.
This particular issue is not on it, although there is a management article, Article 82, which we'll discuss a little bit in the next segment, one of the segments before we leave here today, that deals with some of the things that happen at town meeting, not the replacement of town meeting. And indeed, one or two of those things are things that Curtis mentioned before in terms of non-voting taxpayers' ability to speak at town meeting, which was passed several years ago, apparently never approved by the legislature. Now it's back on the warrant. I think that this is not the town. The last town meeting was one where this was discussed. A path forward was voted upon, and now it's incumbent on the town council study committee to take us down that path and get us to either the next town meeting or the next annual special town meeting for further consideration. So Amy, one question, your comment is, I think, very, very valuable in thinking about this thing. But what I want to understand is, are people dissatisfied about the select board or about the town meeting or about both?
Yeah, I think they just, but I don't think they were citing personal people. I just think that they feel that the form of government could be a lot different and a lot better. I think they also have some frustration with the town meeting format themselves. But, I think there are some pluses and minuses to the town meeting. I mean, it's sort of, I would like to see, I wish there was a hybrid form of government, because at a regular council meeting, there is no opportunity for back and forth. You have your 2 or 3 minutes and that's it. And council can respond at the end of the meeting or not. And so there's benefit to putting everyone together. I guess you could still have a town hall meeting every now and then, but I think frustrated with both. I think they feel they're understaffed and I mean, there's so many, if you think of all the issues on that island, it's really unbelievable for such a small place that they're dealing with. We all know what they are, but it's a lot. If you think of, I don't know where you all live now, but how many towns have airport, hospital, beach, coastal resiliency issues, harbor, you have a serious, ESL and affordable housing issue. It's not like people can live in the next town. I mean, they have an awful lot on their plate and maybe not enough firepower to handle all these things.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I look at it even a different way. How many towns of 15,000 people have an annual budget of over $200 million? This is not even a small city. This is a medium-sized city, and that's due because of the sort of seasonal nature of it. That has a lot of problems that the average small town of its size, and it's not that small anymore, but still small. It just is a lot to handle, and it needs something better. And hopefully the work of this committee that Curtis has got going and Donna is participating on will lead us to the promised land of something better. Yeah, Amy.
Just one other thing, just because of something else that I'm working on. I mean, you guys probably know way more about this than I do. I have never really had this discussion about town meeting, but I believe there is a way to petition for a special meeting within the town meeting. Have you guys looked into that? That I think if you circulate a petition, and I think it requires 200 signatures, you could force have this special meeting within the normal town meeting if you don't want to wait a whole other year for whatever you're doing. I just thought I'd mention that.
Well, it's a way to have in addition to the town meeting, the annual town meeting, there is a way to handle it. And I don't know the
Yeah.
rules. And we had one last year on short-term rentals, basically, and then
Right, yeah.
tacked on some other things to that. And I think that's what you may be referring to. Donna?
Yeah, I just wanted, Amy, you had said that there's no interaction in a town council meeting. Yes, there is.
I think
And
I
there's-
guess what I mean, if things are on the agenda, they are, right, Donna?
No, even if you speak.
Oh, okay.
Yes, definitely.
Well, the problem,
And Barnstable, if you care to look at what Barnstable is doing, it's very educational,
Yeah.
but you can
The
respond.
reason I said that to you, if you may be able to get a credit if you can't refund it, you know,
Ubasano's kind
would be a possibility too. But
Peter? Hello?
Peter, you're muted.
Peter Halley, you're muted.
Sorry, I did that. I was trying to mute
Oh.
Lou. And I clicked the wrong one.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Peter. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess here's, following up on that, I think the issue is, and I've had this experience as I've observed the current select board. Yes, you can have your say at the beginning, and maybe you can have your say at the end, but there's nothing that requires the select board to respond to you. And in fact, they don't. I mean, they listen to you. They have, their faces are blank, and they're supposed to get back to you in some form or another. But I've been to many meetings where the person says, I've been before you several times. I still haven't heard from you. There is no given. There is no exchange. And I think that arguably the committee ought to be thinking about, how can you foster that exchange if you're going to have a true, opportunity for the townspeople to engage with their legislature. So just to have the opportunity to be heard, and for 2 minutes doesn't do much good unless there's an exchange back and forth. And I think that ought to be encouraged.
Yeah, Donna?
Yeah, Peter Kahn, responding to that, maybe I didn't make myself clear, but with town council, and the councilman, you are able to exchange, you are able to act. They will refer something to, let's say, the financial groups. So the difference, I think, with select board is that they have to wait. The difference, and then town council, they can act on it right away, and they have to get back to you.
Well, I think it needs to be, I'm not sure that's the case, but whatever the case is,
But
I
it
think
is
it needs to be in
the
writing.
case,
I think it needs
Peter.
to be I think whatever you do, I think you need to put it in writing that so
It
it's
will be
required.
when we get to it, yes.
Yeah, good. So I think we've pretty well chewed through this topic, and I very much appreciate Donna, your report, and Curtis, your coming and adding your intelligence to all this, and everybody who has views. I think that it may be that those views can be communicated in a concrete way through Donna to the committee, or perhaps even directly to the committee if you see fit. I know I have some language for them that I've shared with some people, and I'll give to other people because I'm sure people want to talk about that as well. So I think we're pretty well, yeah, Donna.
Yeah, I just wanted to end with that. Maybe you just alluded to it, but you mentioned earlier that you are going to prepare something for the ACNVT so that we could have more of a role. And as Curtis said, the sooner the better, which I think is wonderful if you would do that.
I will do that.
And submit it to the
next meeting.
committee.
I will, we'll have something for the next meeting.
Wonderful, thank you.
Good. Our next meeting, not.
Oh, okay.
Which is in a month from now. Okay, so let's move on to I think, Lynn, is there any update on the bike safety issues that were discussed the last time?
Unfortunately, they didn't meet in January. There's nothing on the calendar for February. they're a committee that takes their time to organize, but they are without a chair. So I think their focus is on finding an additional member for the committee, as well as fine tuning. They want to update bylaw 57, which includes the operation of bicycles, but also the moped rental agencies and bike right-of-ways. So I would look for that, because Mike Burns is the assigned town representative. A lot of it will come from Mike. So my report is very short because nothing has happened. And I'm sure they're trying to coordinate some things with the new police chief, just to have conversations with her about the safety issues that they're encountering on places like Milestone Road with mopeds and class 2 bicycles that have been stripped into class 3. So I will keep you posted as soon as something comes up.
My recollection was, were we also waiting on perhaps revision of the state statutes on these, class 1,
Yes.
2, 3 bicycles? Yeah.
Yeah. So they're coordinating it with the state. So
Yeah.
government is not an efficient, fast entity at times.
Yeah, good. Okay. So then we're on to review of annual town meeting citizen article for our consideration. In the reminder about the meeting, Kathy sent around a link to the articles, and I appreciated her doing that. I went through the articles again yesterday, and so I picked out some that I wanted to call to people's attention, just to see if there is a non-voting taxpayer issue in any of them. So let me see. I guess the first articles that are at issue, I think 59 through 60, 62, is it? 62 or 63, which all have to do with short-term rentals or residential rental use. And I know, Kathy has been keeping up with that, and Kathy's going to basically bring us up to date on these articles. I think in the past, we've been very, very concerned about the short-term rental articles, and that we have officially communicated our concerns having to do with them not discriminating against non-voting taxpayers. And from my reading, these articles that are up at the next town meeting, unless amended, do not invoke the concerns that we've had in the past. But Kathy, what's going on?
Okay, so there's two things. One is the articles. I'll talk about that first, and the second part is the registry, which there's been movement in progress on that front as well. So at one of the select board meetings where the town was looking at those 4 articles, one was submitted by there are 3 of them that are general bylaws. So there are 3 versions or 3 flavors of general bylaw restrictions, and then there's one that's a zoning article. So the 3 versions that are out there, the select board requested that when they, in their review, and I think the FinCom as well, that the authors of the articles or the submitters of the articles try to get together and see if they could negotiate a deal so that maybe everything could be boiled down into just one article. So that is the discussion that's going on between Michael Kopko, who submitted, I think it's Article 59. Article 60 is the town's article, and Article 61 is Stephen Cohen's article. So I spoke with Steve last night. He's continuing to talk with Mr. Kopko on trying to get down to one thing. And I think the sticking point right now is everybody agrees on the commercial limitation of commercial STRs and commercial properties. The only sticking point right now is whether that's grandfathered or not. So the other things are really non-issues at this point. So it's possible that there may be something that comes out of this, and that would be revealed at the FinCom public hearing on these articles, which is Monday. So the idea is to get something figured out. And I think town council is involved as well to represent the town on their version. So I don't know where that's gonna go, and there'll be further discussion on it, but it's possible that there'll just be one article, someone will remove theirs or say, don't consider it, take no action or something like that. So that's pretty much where that is. The town's article has Steve Cohen's article basically says, no future commercial property can be an STR, but if you have one, you can keep operating it until it's sold or transferred. And then, so basically over time, they would go away. And there's only about 4% of all of them are in that category. And the town article does that same thing. Plus it adds 2 other items. One is, not allowing them in deed restricted affordable housing type properties, which pretty much is redundant because the deeds already say that you can't do that. And then they also have a restriction that you cannot have short-term rentals in timeshares or interval ownerships. That is pretty much not in existence either. So neither one of them does an awful lot because there aren't any, but they could prevent things in the future. So there's really subtle differences at this point. And I think the town and everybody seems to be feeling, well, let's take it one bite at a time. Let's go and try and pass something that everybody agrees on, and then we can add other things later if we need to. So are there any questions on that?
I guess just my own question, and then Jean, I see a hand up too. You've used this term commercial. Do you mean corporate?
Corporate, yes, I mean corporate. Sorry.
Okay. Jean? You don't have your hand up? You're on mute. Okay. Anybody else?
There is interval ownership. There is something that came on the market where the house will be managed and you can use it for a month or 2 months at a time. So I think it is important to keep that in the article because it is something that is being tested on the island.
Right. Timeshares already are a handful because they were outlawed in the 70s. They have sort of disappeared over time. And I don't disagree that that's an important thing to consider. And so that's certainly not, I don't think that's any particularly controversial at this point. So that could stay in as well with his discussions. So thank you for making that point. The other thing I wanted just to say is the zoning article that's also Steve Cohen's basically is a companion to whatever of the bylaws get passed, because all it's doing is saying that is to stop the lawsuit. So it says that short-term rentals are a permitted use in all residential zones as long as you're in full compliance with whatever the general bylaw is. That means what it is right now, and that's chapter 123. That's all the stuff that got passed a few years ago about the registry and noise and nuisance and all that stuff is already in the law. And all 3 of these general bylaws just add restrictions to that law. So the zoning says as long as you're in compliance with however that law reads now and in the future, then it's a legal use in zoning. So that's a companion basically to any of the articles that get passed, or if none of them get passed, it's a companion to the existing general bylaw. Donna?
Yeah, Kathy, would you just explain that companion piece? Does that mean then that Steve Cohen and so forth are saying, yes, short-term rentals are island-wide?
Yes, the way they are now. They are island-wide now, and they're just making that legal, but only legal if you're in full compliance with all the other rules that now exist or will exist for them. The point of this is to put all the lawsuits to bed. There's 3 of them currently right now that still have not been decided. They're still in the courts.
And that companion piece is clearly in the your petitions, so forth? That companion piece that short-term rentals actually will be island-wide?
Right, yeah, they are island-wide now, and the town has ruled several times that they are permitted use island-wide. And they exist island-wide. And so this, but it doesn't say that in the zoning. So this is just making it in the zoning what the town has already ruled, but they're in court along with everybody else being sued. There are three active lawsuits right now.
Kathy, have there been any updates in those lawsuits since we last met? Any
Uh,
developments?
the judge, I forget when we met. The judge
A
had
month ago.
they had already met. The judge had the trial completed the first week in January, so I think we talked about it. And he said he would take it under advisement and make a ruling. And you said, I think at the time, there's no timeline on that statement. And so he has not made a ruling yet.
Okay.
Kathy, has Act Now, which has been in the past, Act Now was opposed to that zoning change that Steve Cohn's article proposes. Is Act Now still going to oppose that?
I have no idea. They seem to be pivoting their focus to, Julia Linder is no longer with them, and they seem to be pivoting their focus towards the Lease for Locals program. What they'll do, I really don't know what they plan to do for the, they didn't, last year at a special town meeting, they didn't have yard signs and a whole bunch of stuff all around. I don't know what they'll do this year. So.
Yeah. Okay, so that's, I think that we've covered short-term rentals now.
I can just provide an update on the registry if you want to
Yep.
hear that. So there's a lot going on there. The group that included me and Matt Heffenreffer from the Process First and a few other people from the real estate agency, the ones that the town asked us to help them pick the new vendor, and we did. And then they asked us to come back in and do testing of the new registry, which we did. And we met with Roberto and provided feedback to him and found out that he is hoping now that this launches in March, and that he will, before he goes on parental leave. And with his new position, I think you may have heard, he's moving to Fairwinds.
Yep.
I'm guessing he goes out on parental leave in March and he shows up at Fairwinds in June. And so there's going to be this great big hole, and who's going to take over getting that out there. So the good news is that we'll be involved with Nantucket Together, as well as real estate folks are going to be involved in. We convinced them to have a soft launch of the registry where there will be 2 people who are short-term rental operators who will volunteer to be the guinea pigs and try to use the new system and figure out what works, doesn't work, what kinds of scenarios they can't support, and have them fix that before it's open to the general public. So they're going to do that. And then we're also going to be part of the help desk and putting together frequently asked questions and having a hotline where people can call and get assistance for how to register their property. So that will also happen in partnership with the town. And the idea is that the registry will be open in March or thereabouts. The deadline for submitting your registration, and this is for the 2025 season. This is for next year, not 2024, because they're so late. So they'll have all of March to November to get everything fixed and working, so that by the November 1st deadline, which is for 2025, everybody should have been registered. So that's the plan.
Great, great. Okay, the next one up is Article 64. And this is a car rental issue. And as you may recall, last time there was a citizen warrant brought by a person who I guess had been busted for running a car rental operation without appropriate documentation. That article, the citizen warrant article, contained a provision that would have discriminated against rental car ownership by non-resident taxpayers. And so I was tasked with writing something up and sending it to the Finance Committee and the Select Board. And I did that and sent it to the General Counsel for the island as well. At the Finance Committee meeting, that article was not very welcomed. And there's a lot of concern that it was not in proper form and what have you. And we learned that the town was also going to do its own warrant article, which it has now done. And that is Article 64 in the warrants, and the article that we were concerned with is now Article 65. It's still in there, but the town article will come first. The town article solves a lot of the problems, and it's in appropriate form, and it does not discriminate against non-voting taxpayers. And so I think there is nothing more for us to be done on these articles, but I wanted to bring you up to date. We'll continue to stay opposed to Article 65 and probably say nothing about Article 64 because it doesn't affect us. So I don't know if anybody has questions about that, and I don't know that I could answer them beyond what I've already said anyway, but going on from that, then there's Article 67, home rule petition to establish coastal resilience districts over the whole island. I asked Gary, because he's our coastal resilience guru, to sort of explain that and to tell us if there was any issue in it for us.
Okay, thanks, Peter. The good news is there are no issues discriminating against non-voting taxpayers in that. And basically, the coastal resiliency district is a concept that has not been, it's not been used even in the state of Massachusetts. It's been used in a few different states. And it's basically a way to try to get funding for coastal resiliency projects. Right now, what we spend a lot of time talking about on coastal resiliency issues is that who's going to pay for that? And since different communities have different coastal resiliency issues, the question is, why is my community, why is Brand Point going to have to pay for the Sconset Bluff, or why is some people in other areas have to pay for Mattaket's problems? And so what they end up doing most of the time is finding a way that either if it doesn't benefit the entire island, it shouldn't come out of the general taxpayer base. And they use something that's called betterments, where they actually set up a schedule to increase the taxes temporarily on the communities or the people in the areas who will improve, who will get improvements in their living and their lifestyle by virtue of dealing with these coastal resiliency issues. But betterments is not a long-term solution to that. And so someone came up with this in some other states, the idea of forming coastal resiliency districts, which would be a more formal way of getting government grants, perhaps the Army Corps of Engineers, stuff like that, to take on some of these projects. But at the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, we weren't sure what should be the coastal resiliency district. Should it be a community like Sconset, or should it just be a section of Sconset? Same thing goes for Brand Point and other parts of the island. And so we don't have the answer to that yet. And so what we concluded we should put in this warrant article is to allow Nantucket itself to be a community residential district, and with the ability to have sub-districts within Nantucket. And they can be identified in terms of getting funding for long-term projects that need to be dealt with in order to improve coastal resiliency. It's a long process. We've just started that process. And so if this article is approved, it'll then go to the state, and it'll take another year or so before the state finally approves that. As I say, no, Massachusetts doesn't have any yet. And we would be the initiator of this whole concept for the state. So that's what it's really about. It's a means of trying to get additional formats and funding for coastal resiliency issues.
Thank you. You've made something very, very complicated to read, very simple to understand. I appreciate that. And so there's nothing for us to do. This is developing, and it looks like it has a potential benefit
Yep.
for the island. Any other questions about that? Okay. The next one that I noticed is the Article 79, housing bank transfer fee. It's 79M. And basically, as you know, we have affordable housing issues right and left on Nantucket. And I think this is part of this effort to set up a housing bank and to finance it. And this deals with the financing of basically affordable housing on Nantucket. And I just want everybody to be aware that paragraph 79M of Article 79 would provide in the future a 0.5% transfer fee on transfers of properties it would start applying at every dollar over $2 million of that transfer. So that, for Nantucket is a small transfer under $2 million, big transfer for most other communities, would not be subject to this tax. And for more valuable housing, there's the 0.5%. There are various exemptions and all the rest of it. I have no idea what the prospects of this are going forward, because I believe that, like the Coastal Resilient District issue, this needs to be passed by Nantucket, then passed again by the state legislature. And I know that I guess the real estate lobby has not been very, very supportive of transfer fees of this nature.
Peter,
Yep.
the good news about this is that the new governor is basically in favor of this, and in her long-term plan, she has actually included this kind of a fee or an ability for municipalities to install in the proposal that is now going before the Massachusetts legislature. So if in fact they approve it, then if our town meeting approves it, it'll be actually permitted and probably won't have to go through 2 more years of a special look, because it's already included in Governor Healy's bill.
Yeah, so this would just be local action in concert with already existing state law, bring it down to local level. Okay, well, that's good. I don't think there is an issue for us in this, but in case anybody thought there was, I want to make sure it was brought to everybody's attention.
Ralph has his hand up, Peter.
Ralph, go ahead.
Is the proposed transfer fee imposed on the buyer, I assume?
On the seller.
On the seller?
Yes, in other words, right now, we have the land bank fee, which is imposed, which you pay on the buyer, the buyers pay. So
Right.
when we buy property, we have to add 2%.
Right.
This, for the first time, would be a fee imposed on the seller, and to make sure it doesn't affect most local residents, it doesn't start until it's at least $2 million, more than $2 million. And then it is 0.5% after that. And the real estate industry is still not sure they're going to support it, even though the governor has put it in her bill.
Yeah, and there's also a provision that fee, if this were all passed into law and enacted, that 0.5% fee could either be reduced in the future or expanded in the future. Right. And I don't think there is any limit. There are not limits one way or the other. but it's a starting point. This is like a housing bank instead of a land bank financing mechanism. So it's not an unfamiliar issue, and it certainly goes to an area of intense need on Nantucket. Let me see. My next one was I think 81, Article 81, which should be close to the heart of everybody here. It's the act amending the Nantucket Sewer Act. And I just want, this is one where there is this provision in this amendment, the bylaw amendment, whereas let's see, it's section 1, let's see, it's sort of new section 8A into the Sewer Act that would allow the Nantucket Sewer Commission is hereby authorized to adopt a regulation that allows said sewer commission to waive all or a portion of sewer connection fees for year-round residents who otherwise qualify the resident tax exemption under 5C of Chapter 59 of the general laws. So I just want, if anybody has a concern about this, I want to call to your attention. It clearly is a feature that treats year-round residents differently than non-taxpayer residents, and it deals with connection fees. I have to confess to you that I'm not sure exactly what a connection fee is, whether that's connecting up the sewer or whether it's the use of the sewers themselves. Yeah, Lynn.
I can tell you because I had bought my house 25 years ago with septic because Sconset couldn't increase theirs. And so a year ago, I was asked by the Board of Health to connect. My fee was $18,000. And it's based on the number of bathrooms you have. And if you have a washing machine, this is all computed into it. You have to have a survey that surveys where you're going to connect. So that's an additional fee. So by the time you are finished with the work that goes in, you're paying double what the fee is. So it is not a small amount. And when you think that the advantage of everyone connecting to the sewer is to have less things going into the harbor or less pollutants in your groundwater, it's advantageous for everyone to connect. Now, if you can prove that you need monetary assistance, you can spread out that fee. I think it's over 5 years. But this clearly, I understand why they put this in because it's very expensive for someone who lives there full time on a fixed salary. But I also find it discriminatory because you should be encouraging everyone from an environmental point of view to connect. And as my surveyor said, and even David Gray at Sewer, who I've worked with in my role on the Civic Association, there's really no solid reason why the fee is that high. I mean, it's exorbitant. And I only have a 4-bedroom house. So imagine the huge homes that are being built. This is quite a moneymaker. And I can't say you can justify the price, or no one, frankly, justified it to me.
Yeah. Kathy?
Yeah, I would just question, if people, if the year-round residents can get an exemption from that fee, then that would mean that the fees have to rise for everybody else who doesn't get the exemption. If in fact it's based on the cost of doing it, which Lynn says it's not, but you would imagine that would drive the fees up for everybody else who is paying for it. And you're right, it should be encouraged. There are lots of parts of the island that'll never be on the sewer. Like where we live, there'll never be a sewer out in Tom Nevers. So that'll never affect us, but it seems like, it's discriminatory in that way, as it eventually will raise the fees for those who have to pay that don't qualify for the residential exemption.
Yeah. Well,
Lynn, I'm sorry, what is I'm sorry, is the exemption based strictly on whether you're a resident or not? Anybody who's a resident can apply can get the exemption automatically? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, that is a possibility.
What's it based on? That's what I'm trying to
The
understand.
sewer commission would have to establish a regulation to enforce this and come up with a set of standards in order to do this. This just gives them the legal authority. And I'll just read, this is on page 61 of the warrant, and it's Article 81. This says, notwithstanding any provisions of Chapter 83, blah, 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 the Nantucket Sewer Commission is hereby authorized to adopt a regulation that allows said sewer commission to waive all or a portion of sewer connection fees for year-round residents who otherwise qualify for the resident tax exemption under Section 5C of Chapter 59 of the General Laws. So just so I think everybody understands now that they can waive all or a portion of, but we don't know what their regulation is at this point. I guess the one understanding is that the definition of year-round resident is somebody who otherwise qualifies for the resident tax exemption under existing law. So so the answer to your question is that as I read this, it could potentially be they could adopt a resolution that is, for example, not need-based and would say anybody who qualifies for the residential tax exemption can connect to the sewer at no charge. That's the ultimate. I don't know what that is. I've not done any research to see what the initial plan is for this and how many people they think are likely to do that, because as Kathy points out, they're just portions of the island there is no sewer to connect to. So this will be the more populated sections of the island where there is presumably an existing sewer running down the street or not too far away. And so it makes sense to make a short sewer extension. This doesn't, so it's a discrimination, and it's a discrimination like the existing real estate tax exemption. But from what little research I've done, it's not a discrimination that violates the federal Constitution, because it's based on your sort of your non-commercial use of your residential house. And therefore it's not something in interstate commerce.
Nevertheless, Peter,
Yep.
You know, if we have lots of people on the island that make $1 million a year, you know, selling a few of these expensive homes, and I would be troubled if suddenly somebody felt it wasn't going to be needs-based, and if just the mere fact that you have your 6 months and a day, and therefore you qualify under the exemption as a resident, and they would suddenly not have to pay $18,000 or $25,000 or $30,000 when somebody else who is a non-resident taxpayer has to make that payment. So that would trouble me, forgetting the fact that it's not a constitutional issue. It's not something I think we ought to be happy about. That kind of discrimination makes no sense. I feel the same way, as you know, about the solar credits. And when I asked Laura Sinatra, who's the head of the energy department, why she thinks it's okay to give residents a credit for putting solar roofs on, but not non-residents, isn't that important for the island to save costs of energy and avoid a third cable? Her answer was, we'd love to give it to the non-residents. We just don't have enough budget to do it. So that's why we limit it to residents only. But it still, to me, is improper discrimination. And if it's not needs-based, I don't really like it. I don't know if there's anything we should do about it.
Well, I think there is a public health issue here too, as I think Lynn brought up, and a very important public health issue, and that is that we're much better off with sewers than septic all over the place. And but it's a matter of who pays, and so this is kind of a push me pull you. I think everybody agrees that where there's sewers, people ought to be connected to those sewers, and secondly, that where people have the ability to pay, they ought to pay, and so I guess the one principled way of addressing this is to, maybe just say that that any that the waiver ought to be based on ability to pay.
Right, needs-based.
Needs-based waiver, and it ought to extend to anybody who has that need.
I
Yeah, Scott?
Well, I just note the temporal problem here too, which is, so I'm a non-resident. This comes up. I become a resident. I spend my 6 months in a day. I connect to the sewer. Next year, I decide my life has changed a little bit. I'm no longer a resident. Additional problem, I'm a resident and I sell the house the next year to a non-resident. How does that work? So it's fraught. It's really fraught. And difficult to get the equities right here. But I think your approach is exactly correct. That share and share alike, and any relief should be available based on economic need, not on the basis of residency.
Okay, so
can I just say, fundamentally, we should be against any town regulation which discriminates against non-voting taxpayers. And that whether it's good for the town to have sewer connections or not, it shouldn't, or solar panels or not, or whatever, we should, as a committee representing non-voting taxpayers, be against any regulations that discriminate based on that.
Okay, so
surely if they discriminate based on economic issues, that's another matter. But
Lou and then Patty.
You're on mute, Lou.
You're on mute, Lou.
He's trying.
You're still on mute.
Yeah, you should be able to hear me now. That's
you-
what led to the formation of this committee back in the 1990s, because of the discrimination against non-voting taxpayers. This is the kind of issue that we ought to be speaking up about and speaking up loudly.
And then Patty.
As usual, I totally disagree, because I think that one of the things we are grappling with on Nantucket is making sure that we have nurses and policemen and an infrastructure of employees available, that they can't come and find housing here. And this is part and parcel of that. So that need-based, I think, is very, very important. And we should not just say anything that isn't, the way we feel about non-taxing, non-voting taxpayers. I don't think that there's a line there. I don't think you should cut out the need-based at all.
It can be Patty, it can be need-based for locals and non-voting taxpayers. It could be need-based for both. We don't have to say it's not need-based.
Good point, as long as that's clear, for us as a committee to say, hey, this is lay down the gauntlet and say, it's against, the non-voters, taxpayers. Okay.
So let me summarize this if I can, and then I'll try to put something in writing. And then the question is, who does this go to? I guess.
Peter, who's the sponsor of this bill? Is it the town that is sponsoring it, or is it a private citizen?
Hold on, I'll tell you in a second. It is Select Board. Select Board is the sponsor. So this would go back to the Select Board. And I don't know whether FinCom has opined.
So
So I would, in general, I guess, write to both the FinCom and the Select Board. And I think I want to put this in a positive way. I think we get more thing being positive. And the positive way is we're really supportive of the sanitation, sewers, and all the rest of it, and having as many hookups as are practical. And we recognize that some people cannot afford the hookup, but that applies equally to some non-resident taxpayers as it does to resident taxpayers. And then there are all these complications that I think Scott mentioned of you install the sewer just before you sell the land and save the money, that kind of thing, or the house. So something short and sweet that says, sewers, yes, need-based waivers or financing should be across the board. Does that sound reasonable to people?
I think you should do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so do we need I guess, a motion and a
Also move.
motion and second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye, let's see.
Aye.
So 1, 2,
Everything's unanimous.
Hi.
Aye.
looks like a lot of people. Yep.
Yeah, it's
And
unanimous.
Anybody opposed? Yep. Amy, you're if you wanted to say something, your speaker.
I don't know who votes, everybody on the call, or is there just a
No,
committee?
just the members of the committee. I'm sorry.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Good. Okay, so that is past that. The next one that I have, let's see, so that was Article 81, is Article 82. And by the way, for those people who are anxious to do something else, that's my last one. I don't know if anybody else in the committee has focused on any of these articles that they find to be a problem. Article 82 is an act amending the Charter of Nantucket to implement certain recommendations of the Town Government Study Committee. So that's not the Town Council Study Committee, that's the previous study committee. And I recognize some of these recommendations. I just have a couple of very small things that I want to, actually, there's only one thing in this that.
Peter, can I ask Curtis why we have to do this again? They were already approved by the town meeting and they're sitting waiting for the Attorney General why would we go ask the same questions? I was thrilled that the Town Government Study Committee came up with these 2 years ago. And I'm surprised that we have to go back and ask them again to vote the same thing. Why do we have to do that?
Because the legislature never acted on it. And that happens all the time. It goes up there. They have to give you an affirmative vote, and it just never bubbled up with all the other stuff they're doing. So this is the second year we have had to resubmit the same recommendations to the legislature.
Maybe we would talk about
council,
changing,
please.
we would talk about changing the town government at the state level as well.
So while Curtis is on this call, the only thing that I wanted to add to this is Article 2, Section 2.5, Town Meeting Warrant, and then it's sub D, paren, small d, close paren. I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. It's Article. I'm getting myself mixed up. It is sub small b, close sub. And it says, let me start over again. It's C, sub C. The select short publish warrant with the recommendations of the Finance Committee by mailing a copy of such warrant to the address or postal box of each registered voter at least 14 days prior to the town meeting, which is fine. And I think that was the recommendation of the committee the last time around. And I would add to that the same language that they have in sub B, and that is, and make a copy available on the town website.
Yes.
And I would make it parallel to the preceding.
It already is.
Because again, you know, all the rest of us then get to know what's happening and what the FinCom has said, and especially for non-voting taxpayers, perhaps that just raises an alert that, you know, we really do need to address this at the town meeting, or we don't need to address this at the town meeting that follows shortly. But it's kind of that simple, using the technology, which is so easy to use, to get more notice out. Yeah.
I actually got the warrant off the website 2 weeks before it was printed and mailed, so it's available.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Usually it is. It's just not in the law, and they make the they make it they put it in the law as to the original warrant, and then somehow it didn't make it through to the next paragraph as well. So it's almost a ministerial change of make sure the law is parallel. But I just suggest that, Curtis, and I can write a little line saying that perhaps somebody wants to suggest amendment to that effect. Yep. So those are things I must confess, I skimmed through this, and those were the ones that I picked up that seemed to have some relevance to our interests, and apparently some of them do. So, and I'll follow up on the that other article, which is, I guess, 81, yeah. Does anybody have any other articles? Amy?
I do have one, but I'm suggesting, I guess, after your committee makes their comments, would I have an opportunity?
Yeah, I think right now everybody, so does anybody else on the committee have a comment about the annual town meeting warrant articles that they want us to think about and see if we're going to take a position on? I don't see any hands up. So Amy?
Okay, thank you. I wanted to bring up articles number 77 and 78. I was actually up there supporting the woman, Val Oliver, who's a resident on Nantucket, as she put these forward the other day in front of the FinCom. And essentially, the two articles are tied to Nantucket's Good Neighbor Agreement with respect to the Vineyard Wind project. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the agreement. But let me just explain a little bit about that. She put the articles forward because she thinks Nantucket's Good Neighbor Agreement with Vineyard Wind harms the town and harms our residents as well as our non-residents. And the same would be for future similar agreements. So in order to explain the harms, it's important to understand that the Good Neighbor Agreement was signed in closed session, and that no discussion of the terms of the agreement occurred with the community, even though the provisions in the agreement seriously impact every resident, property owner, every business owner, and the town itself potentially forever. If you have an opportunity, and I'm happy to send this to everyone to the committee after, but just to the important provisions in this are the obligation sections. So in this agreement, Vineyard Wind agreed to pay up to $13 million into a community fund that would sit inside the Nantucket's Community Foundation. $4 million of it was predicated on the approval of the Vineyard Wind project that is now currently under construction. Any further payments are based on Avangrid's ability to build 3 offshore wind facilities within our viewshed. Vineyard Wind also agreed to install an automatic detection lighting system and to paint the turbines gray. And they also agreed to remove or relocate the front row of turbines, which amounted to about 6. And that's important to remember in a minute. On the flip side, the Nantucket parties' obligations. Now, the Nantucket parties on this were the town, the Nantucket Preservation Trust, and Marai Mitchell. And those parties have agreed to inform residents and visitors of the benefits of Vineyard Wind's projects. Nantucket parties are to inform federal, state, and local officials of their support for the projects as part of the federal review process. And the Nantucket parties agreed that the money and mitigations, which were really nothing burgers at the best, they were just industry standards now. But that the Nantucket parties must inform BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and the National Park Service and the Massachusetts Historic Commission of that agreement. So what everyone knows is Nantucket is one of the oldest and largest national historic landmarks in the United States. And we have very strong protections. We have beyond Section 106 protections, we have Section 110F that cover both or all of our island, actually, and Muskeget and Tuckernuck. And it's imperative that we all understand that our viewshed is covered under those protections. Members of the Historic Commission and the HDC and many other organizations expend a lot of time, effort, and money protecting our island's historic nature. And Nantucket and everyone who works, lives, and owns property on Nantucket benefits from those protections. We all benefit. Nantucket has value because of those protections. And in fact, our entire tourism economy is rooted in the fact that the island is a National Historic Landmark. The findings in the Vineyard Wind draft environmental impact statement, and that's the study that the U.S. government releases for the permitting, the U.S. government's permitting agencies release ahead of the permitting, state that the visual impact from Vineyard Wind on Nantucket would be considered major, and that's in bold letters and underline. This finding was an obstacle in Vineyard Wind's permitting process until Nantucket signed the Good Neighbor Agreement. The Good Neighbor Agreement essentially gave us almost nothing to mitigate the impacts to our viewshed. In fact, most of the mitigations are considered industry standards at this point. The final environmental impact statement says that according to what is coming down the road for our island, 775 turbines will be visible from Nantucket. So removing 6 is hardly a mitigation. I believe that we can all agree that that still qualifies as a major impact. The major impacts to Nantucket from offshore wind will certainly negatively impact our economy. According to the town's own attorneys on this matter, Cultural Heritage Partners, offshore wind could cause Nantucket's tourism economy to lose more than $815 million over the next 20 to 30 years. And I would say that number is very conservative. Those same lawyers suggest that Newport, Rhode Island would lose an estimated over $5 billion during that time frame. The Good Neighbor Agreement covers 4 projects off Nantucket's shores, and the Vineyard Wind project that we are seeing now is the first. 3 more are included. According to the terms of the Good Neighbor Agreement, Nantucket's Offshore Wind Community Fund should have received a payment of $4 million back in November of 2021 at that financial close. Good Neighbor projects 2 and 3, Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind, have now canceled their projects because the economics don't work. In fact, the owners of these projects went out so badly that they have paid roughly $70 million in fines to get out. Now, why is that important to Nantucket? Despite what you may have heard, delivering energy from offshore wind is very expensive. Last week, this was the day before I was up there, on January 22nd, the market price of electricity in southern Massachusetts was under $39 a megawatt hour. Vineyard Wind's power purchase agreement states that its 20-year average nominal cost is $89 a megawatt hour. So our electricity bills will definitely not be getting cheaper. That's a huge difference. The reason Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind have canceled is that they want more money for the project. So certainly more than the $70 million in fines that they just paid, and they want it from us, the New England ratepayers. So it's a question, will these deals ever close? Will Nantucket ever see any more money from this Good Neighbor Agreement? And are these payments to the community fund worth what we have all, what we will all pay individually? So Nantucket would have benefited greatly had we properly vetted the Vineyard Wind project with the community. Now our hands are tied, as there is one additional and enormous cost that Nantucket needs to consider, and that's decommissioning the turbines. So it was recently discovered during a FOIA request that Vineyard Wind has been waived the mandate to escrow funds for decommissioning. We're hearing that decommissioning can cost as much as the projects. So the question is essentially at the end of the term on this, there's a lot of
Amy, what would you like us to do?
Well, I
Yeah,
guess, I'm
just go-
sorry. Yeah, I'm probably going on too long, but. I
Yes, you are.
Can't continue this,
I
Peter.
think we got the idea.
All
and-
right, well, I guess the
Yeah.
idea is that these articles are probably, they're non-binding. But it is important that we let the non-residents understand what's happening here. We brought topless bathing to town meeting twice. And this is something that was done, again, these contracts were signed in private session, so the public never knew about it. This impacts everybody. So I would hope that that non-residents support this article at town meeting, and that's why I'm here today. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions?
What,
I heard somebody there.
yeah, what does the town meeting warrant item say? I mean, you've given us the whole
Yeah.
background. I
Yeah,
mean,
so the
what
town,
specifically is it asking the town meeting to vote on?
okay, and I should have probably said that first, but I didn't know how much people knew about the Good Neighbor Agreement, so I started with the background. The two articles, one is asking the town to break the initial Good Neighbor Agreement and bring this to the town for everyone to vet and discuss. And the second article is asking that the town do that for any future proposals that come to Nantucket.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there was a controversy. I remember reading in the Current about this being done behind closed doors, and then all of a sudden some money did appear, and I'm curious how much money was paid.
Yeah, so that is a great question. My point of telling you that the agreement says that at the financial close, which was in November of 2021, a payment was made. And I have it on pretty good information that a $4 million payment was paid.
4 million.
Town never discussed it at all until we started circulating the warrant article. And then there was an article. So a full 2 years later, they talked about money that came to the community. And that, maybe that's just strange timing, but typically when a community fund receives a payment of any size, that's usually front page news. And when the news came, it did not total $4 million. So I don't really want to get stuck in the weeds on the dollars. We would like to see, see the right thing happen and let the community discuss. Val is the president of an organization that I am with, Act for Wales. We have been pushing back very hard on these projects for several reasons. But this is really, this is a very, very big contract that compromises our National Historic Landmark status. And everybody here is a tax-paying property owner. And so.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just one other question. What's the rationale? What was the rationale given that this was, if in fact it was done behind quote unquote closed doors, given the open meeting law requirement in Massachusetts?
Because it's a contract. So they believe that because this was a contract, that this would be subject to closed meeting. And I understand that maybe the actual terms, but the problem is the contract is hog-tying the community. They have a gag order now. They can only support this project. So if this goes up and people hear them, or they don't like the lights and they go to the town can only say, we think this is great. So it's a very, very big contract. I don't think they even understood the magnitude of this. The next projects coming down the pike have the bar lowered for them. Now that this project is in, all the future draft environmental impact statements say things like, well, there's already 70 turbines out there. What's another 70? What's coming are 1,500 square miles of turbines off Nantucket's coast.
I'm sorry, and one last point. I mean, I know there has been litigation. What is the status of the litigation? So where does it stand in the courts?
There are several lawsuits. The organization we are with has the first lawsuit against this first project, and it's all around the environment and the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. But there are several others behind us. We're in the U.S. Appeals Court right now in Boston.
Okay. So you lost in the truck. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Amy, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I have followed it, but not as in-depth as you've been sharing with us. I think we should discuss this, but at another meeting. I think we should, I would suggest that and see if our fellow committee members are interested as well.
Fair enough. Thank you for your time.
Well, perhaps you could give us, some sort of synopsis or something in writing, something that we could take a look at that would sort of pull this together.
I can do that. You can also take a look at our website. It's ACK4Wales.org. You can start there. But I'd also be happy to send you anything. If I send it to Peter, maybe he can distribute it to you.
Sure.
Send it to me or send it to Kathy. And so I think the idea that we sort of table this to a future meeting is a good idea so that people can come up to speed. And also, I do not want to set a record for the length of this meeting.
I know, I'm sorry. I appreciate your time a lot. We really do.
We appreciate your coming and participating. Steve.
I just don't want you to close the meeting without a 30-second PR committee report. So
that sounds like a PR statement for the PR committee.
can I do two things? Just say that I sent an announcement out to Daybreak, The Current, and the Inky, and Daybreak ran it Wednesday and today, and the Inky Online ran it Friday and today. But I want to ask the non-members of this committee, how did they learn about this meeting and why did they attend? If anybody who's not a member wishes to, I think you're all on mute, but if you're still, yeah.
I saw it in the newspaper, in the Inky, which I don't always read. I'm sure it was in the Current as well. And I've known these meetings existed and we've been lazy about joining, so I'm going to try to be better going forward.
I saw it online with the Inky yesterday.
Good. Okay, Steve, thank you for posting that, Steve. Is there anything else that the committee wants to say? The PR committee wants to say while you've got the floor.
No, that's it. I want to watch the UConn basketball games.
Okay, so that's next up, UConn basketball game. So I think we've gone through our next meeting is according to this
March 1st.
And I'm looking forward to that. Any other business for today? I thank everybody for their time. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, I have a feeling it's going to be unanimous. Yeah.
They will.
Second, Peter, it's March 2nd, not March 1st.
Oh,
March 2nd.
Yes,
Okay.
and we're having no speaker, correct?
correct.
I think that is correct unless somebody has a desire for a speaker. It seems to
Bill
me.
Belichick, that would be great to find out what he wants to do.
Yeah, he's a non-voting taxpayer.
He's just
Right.
worried
That's
about
right.
next Sunday.
I thought he basically is a very silent person, isn't he?
Yeah, well,
He'll just glare at us for.
I think you're going to see he's going to be a Fox commentator here shortly. The money's too good.
Yeah,
But he doesn't have another job in the NFL, so.
Yeah.
that's good. Well, thanks a lot, and see you all in a month. Stay well.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
How do you get out of here?
Windmills.
Okay, sorry about that.